Hello students, and welcome to the CompTIA Security+701 Exam Course brought to you by Third Level Technology. I am your instructor, Jim Herbie. In this episode, we're going to begin our learning path through the 701 exam objectives by beginning with Module 1, which covers security concepts. This episode will begin with a discussion of Section 1.1 in the objectives. Our topic is security control types. Let's begin.
We're going to begin by talking about the four different security categories. They are technical, managerial, operational, and physical. The first security category is technical. It is when we use some type of network device or machine technology to provide security to our devices in our network. Technical security can involve the use of hardware devices on our network. These would be things like firewalls, which is a hardware device that allows us to filter network traffic, intrusion detection and intrusion prevention systems, routers, switches, and proxies. All of these different hardware devices allow us to provide some type of security capability on our network. But here you just want to understand that technical security would involve any use of a hardware device to provide some type of security control. Another type of technical security is the use of secure encrypted protocols. Some common secure protocols include IPsec. This is a protocol we use for VPN, virtual private network technology. We also have SSL, secure socket layer, and TLS, transport layer security. These are two protocols that allow us to encrypt data as it's going over the internet. We also can use technical security with our wireless networks. In our wireless networks, we have devices called access points. And with these devices, we can use encryption protocols such as WPA3, Wi-Fi Protected Access 3, to encrypt and protect our data going over our wireless networks. Endpoint devices are when we install some type of software onto our device, such as antivirus or anti-malware software, to help protect from common attacks that we may encounter. Our next security category is managerial. Managerial security is when we are implementing some type of security policy, and that is created and implemented by our managerial or administrative level employees. We can create roles and responsibilities for all of our different users. Implement security training. This is where we can create programs for our employees to educate them about security risks and some best practices. Managerial security will also be part of security dealing with compliance. Compliance is when an organization will have to abide by certain laws or regulations related to security and data privacy. A common example of security compliance would be HIPAA, HIPAA, regulation that governs the privacy of individuals' medical data. And managerial security will also involve disaster recovery planning. This is when our organization will have to have policies in place to respond to any type of natural disaster, disruptive event where our network may become inoperable. The third category of security is operational. Is when we have security controls that are managed by human people. We mentioned that technical security is when our security policies are monitored and managed by computer systems and machines, hardware devices. Operational security is when we have security policies that are managed and implemented by humans. One type of operational security are security patrols. This is when we will use physical human security guards to do patrols of our data centers and buildings to provide surveillance for our assets. Another type of operational security is personnel security. When we are hiring individuals to our organization, we will perform background checks, and this allows us to make sure that the employees that we are onboarding to our organization meet a certain level of security clearance and accessibility. And the fourth type of security category is physical. Physical security is when we have some type physical prevention to our internal and external areas. Perimeter security is when we use fences, gates, and barriers to prevent unauthorized access to our businesses' sensitive areas like our data centers. Physical security will use surveillance systems. This is when we can install video cameras, use motion detections, and other types of sensors to observe and record activities around our premises. Physical security can also use environmental controls. This is when we will protect our physical assets through the use of HVAC systems, sprinkler and fire suppression systems, and backup power sources. So we talked about the 4 different types of security, the 4 categories. We have technical, technology or machines to implement security. Managerial, which is when we have security policies that are created and implemented by our administrative staff. Operational security, where we have security controls that are managed by humans. And physical security, which is where we use some type of physical obstruction to prevent unauthorized access to our sensitive physical locations inside of our buildings. Now we're going to transition in the second half of this episode and discuss the 6 different security control types to understand for the 701 exam. Our first security control type is preventative controls. Preventive controls are when we are trying to take some type of security policy to mitigate a potential security risk before it occurs. Preventive controls are designed to stop unauthorized access and malicious behavior on our network. One common preventive control is a firewall. A firewall is a hardware device or a software application that will monitor and control all of our incoming and outgoing network traffic. With our firewalls, we can use another preventive control called an access control list, or an ACL. ACLs are security rules that we create to either allow or deny users access to specific files and resources on our network. Preventive controls can also take the form of patch management. This is when our administrators will create a schedule to apply updates and patches to our software applications and operating systems. Preventive controls can also be used with antivirus and anti-malware software. This is where we will have software on our machines that will be designed to identify and quarantine or remove malicious software such as viruses, worms, and spyware. The second type of security control is a deterrent control. Deterrents are security controls that are designed to discourage an attacker from carrying out their unauthorized activities. Deterrents are designed to create a perception of risk that if an attacker attempts their unauthorized behavior, that they may suffer some consequences. One common type of deterrent control is security signage. This is when we place signs and warnings around our business in visible locations. This can announce the presence of things like surveillance cameras, alarms, and other security mechanisms to help to prevent and dissuade our attackers from physically accessing our business locations. Deterrents can also take the form of security lighting and alarm systems. These typically work together where we can illuminate certain areas of our business's location when we have an attacker in an unauthorized area. We also can use alarms to trigger sirens or some other type of audible alert to draw attention to the attacker in an unauthorized place. The third type of security control is a detective control. A detective security control is one that is designed to identify security breaches once they have occurred. It allows us to identify when there is some type of breach or violation of our security and to rectify the situation. One common detective control is a SIEM system, SIEM. This stands for Security Information and event management. A SIEM is a software platform that we use to provide real-time alerts when we have some type of security breach, either in a physical location or to a hardware device on the network. Detective controls can also include log monitoring. This is where our administrative staff can review and analyze all the different logs for our users, such as when a user signs in. It also can keep track of all of the different websites and network traffic for a specific user, as well as creating audit trails for data records and archiving. The next type of security control is a corrective control. And corrective security controls are ones that we use to mitigate the impact of a security breach. These are controls that will focus on restoring our systems and our data. One common corrective security control is an incident response plan, or an IRP. An incident response plan will be the steps that our business will follow when we have some type of security incident. Corrective controls can also include software patching. This is when we can apply an updated security fix to an application once the vendor has become aware of a known vulnerability. Corrective controls can also involve user training. If we have some type of recurring security breach, we can use training to inform our employees about the best practices to avoid similar situations in the future. The fifth security control type is compensating. Compensating security controls are those that we put in place to provide an alternative security method when the existing ones are insufficient. One common type of compensating control is the use of encryption. We can use encryption to make sure that all of the data that is being transmitted over our network is secure and unreadable to an attacker. Another compensating control type is VPN, Virtual Private Network. This is a technology we use for remote users to establish a secure encrypted tunnel to access our internal resources inside of our business. Compensating controls can also take the form of multi-factor authentication, or MFA. This is when we will require a user to provide 2 or more different forms of identification. We call these factors. And multi-factor authentication allows us to prevent unauthorized access because a user must provide not only their password and username, but also a second form, either in biometrics, such as a fingerprint or an eye scan, or some type of code that is generated by a software or a hardware token. And lastly, we have directive controls. Directive controls are security measures that we use to establish clear rules and procedures related to our employees' behaviors and practices. Directive controls can take the form of formal documents. One common directive document is an AUP, an acceptable use policy. Acceptable use policies are documents that will define the activities that users are allowed to engage in when they are accessing our network. Another common type of directive control are password policies. This is where we will create rules for the different passwords that are assigned to our users. These would include things like setting a minimum password length, having passwords expire and have to be reset, as well as putting restrictions on the reuse of old passwords. All of these are examples of directive controls.
That will conclude our discussion of Section 1.1, Security Control Types. In our next episode, we will move on to Section 1.2 in the objectives and discuss security fundamentals. We thank you again for following along in the episodes in the course and wish you best of luck in your studies. Enjoy the rest of your day.